Welcome, everyone, to Essential Viewing, a weekly film podcast where one of the three of us proposes a film to watch that we think everyone should view, and we watch it all together and we discuss what we think about it. I'm Cole Beelan.
I'm Bryce Kramer.
And I'm Chris Cuevas, and I picked the film for this week, and my pick was A Most Violent Year. It's a crime drama made in 2014, starring Oscar Isaac, Jessica Chastain, and David Oyelowo. It was written and directed by J.C. Candor. I picked this film because I'm really into gritty crime dramas. I enjoyed it, but I think that Cole and Bryce may have differing opinions from me on it, so I'll pass it off to them to hear what their thoughts were.
Well, Bryce, why don't you start with your kind of like brief opinion, and then I'll give mine, and then we'll
Okay. So I thought it was a good movie. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but it was definitely really well done. And I liked the story was good, but it was a little slow, which I think is a complaint of a lot of people have with this movie. It was really slow. But I thought the acting was fantastic. Some of the cinematography had some really beautiful shots, especially like New York City. They were contrasting that with like the white snow by his oil refinery. And yeah. I
agree with Bryce when he stated that the film was very slow. That was kind of the detracting points for me. I can definitely put up with a slow burn every once in a while, like the first 4 episodes of True Detective or some other like series like that, or Bronson even. Some points is a really slow burn, and I can deal with that to a certain point. But even some of the scenes in the film themselves were very lackluster. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit later on. We talked about the Godfather scene where they're all sitting around the table, but I thought that a lot of the film was, although the story was somewhat interesting, I would have rather watched something that was more kind of grandiose or more like higher stakes or something like that. I know that there were a lot of high stakes in the film itself, but something even bigger than that. It just seemed kind of lackluster overall, and I think Chris was right in saying that I enjoyed it the least of the three of us.
And I understand about the slow pace, because the pace of this film was definitely slow. I mean, I would even say agonizingly slow at times. You know, it felt like a 4 or 5 hour movie, but at the same time, like, I guess I am a slow burn kind of guy. You know, I'm a Paul Thomas Anderson fan. You know, I love a nice slow burn, and I thought that, you know, this film, it burned slowly, but it did keep moving. You know, and it built towards what I thought was a very exciting conclusion. And we'll talk more about that later. But I just thought that, you know, looking at the plot of this movie, you know, it was clearly aiming for the goal of being, you know, a classic crime drama, you know, in the tradition of like a Scarface or, you know, a Donnie Brasco. But what I loved about this movie so much is that the classic crime drama, it gives us a sort of weak-willed protagonist who, over the course of the film, sort of sees the appeal of crime and has their morals stripped away as the film progresses. But this film, it gave us a real hero of a protagonist who, you know, he saw the world kind of collapsing around him, and he saw that morals had been abandoned, and he saw that as a sign that he needed to stick to his morals stronger than ever. You know, that he needed to really keep to the core of what his beliefs were. So it had the look and the feel of a classic crime drama, but it gave us a plot that sort of was about a man sticking to his morals instead of abandoning them, which is what most crime dramas do.
I agree with that a lot.
As do I.
The whole movie was him like trying to make his business succeed by still remaining a moral man. And I think an important question is, did he do that?
I believe he did.
I disagree with that. He mentions, like, from time to time, like, especially at the scene where they're all around the table, and, like, he's complaining about his men getting killed and his trucks getting, well, his men didn't really get killed, but his trucks getting stolen, and he appealed to their moral side to just stop doing this, when I think he's a little hypocritical, in that he didn't really stick to his morals throughout the entire movie, especially where he decided to arm his drivers with guns so they couldn't get stolen, and then when they do get assaulted and he fights back, he doesn't support him at all afterwards and kind of like leaves him to get dealt with by the cops.
That's interesting.
He didn't support the arming of his drivers. Julian, who was the driver that was attacked in the scene, the shootout on the 59th Street Bridge, he was carrying a gun without Abel's knowledge. I remember I read like the Wikipedia page on this last night after we'd watched it, But I agree with you what you guys were saying about his morals and how Evo Morales. There's kind of a correlation there between morals and his last name, but he was someone that held his morals and he stuck to his guns, and I really admire that in characters. It was the same thing with the character of Ivan Locke in Locke, starring Tom Hardy.
Great film.
And I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed him as a character. But other than that, he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't grandiose or special. His wife was, on the other hand, in a certain capacity, because she was willing to do things that Abel was not. I'd like to talk about the deer scene, because. That's when he was about to kill the deer that he had hit with his car with the tire iron or something, and then you're waiting for him to do it, and then his wife just pops off like 3 shots into the deer.
And I just love this deer scene because it says so much about the characters in so little words. You see Abel standing over the deer, and he's hesitating, and I almost interpreted that as because he sees this deer sort of writhing in pain on the ground. I believe that he sees this deer as like a symbol of his innocence. Okay. So he sees this deer on the ground, and he looks at it and he hesitates, and I think it sort of symbolizes this sort of conflict where he knows what he has to do, but at the same time he's not willing to do that. He's not willing to do what has to be done to protect his family, to protect his business. And when his wife comes in and quickly executes the deer, it's sort of like she is the one who...
She's the one that wants to get things done.
She's the one who knows who's going to get things done, and she's going to get things done, however, by any means necessary. And I think that's a theme throughout the movie, and that scene, with almost no dialogue, is able to communicate that theme in such a strong and convincing way. So I thought that scene was I really enjoyed, and I really thought that scene meant a lot.
And they expand on her importance later when he's looking for money to buy the oil storage place, and she's been saving money for so long, without Oscar Isaac's character knowing at all, and it kind of just shows again that she's really holding this company together, doing what needs to get done that he won't do because of his moral values.
And I want to get back to that point, but I want to mention one thing about the deer scene. At one point, after that point in the film, when the deer is shot and then they continue on, and there's the aftermath scene where he calls her a whore for using the little gun, I thought that the film up in that point was Tarantino-esque, and I know you guys may not think that, but let me try to explain. Because it was Tarantino's kind of style with Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs is dialogue scenes that are very, very well written, and there's it's interesting dialogue between colorful characters, and then it's sudden bursts of immense violence or something that's very jarring, and then it goes back to that dialogue. And I like Tarantino for that. And this film kind of reminded me of Tarantino, but there wasn't that witty, exciting dialogue. There was intense dialogue, but it wasn't that Tarantino level of banter about burgers in Europe and stuff like that, in Pulp Fiction, the walking scene when they're going to Brett's place. But that's at that point, those gunshots that were fired by Abel's wife, that woke me up, because I was admittedly almost falling asleep at that point in the movie because it was really slow. But that woke me up, and that brought jogged my attention and got me to pay attention to the movie more.
The movie did seem to really punctuate itself with these brief kind of bursts of violence to sort of kind of keep the pace. Every 30 or so minutes there would be something to happen to sort of kind of add a bookmark between these really slow, really kind of greasy segments of just business negotiations and just conversations. And so I definitely understand what you're saying.
I just don't think that the very brief kind of staccato violence that was in the movie warranted the title A Most Violent Year. I know as soon as we were done, Chris was that was the least violent year, because it really was. There's not a lot of there's a scene where Abel pistol whips a dude several times, and then where Julianne blows his head off.
I think you can interpret the title more as a turbulent year in their life, kind of as a synonym for violent.
Okay.
It's a very hectic and turbulent year for their two lives.
But if you're looking for a all out action film,
go watch Mad Max Fury Road.
Don't watch this movie. You are going to be really disappointed. Yeah. Not that I thought it was a great film, but that's not the kind of film it is. The title is misleading in that way.
And going back to kind of the misleading nature of the film, I want to talk about the intro scene. And I'm not sure what song was playing, but I really liked it. And I'm pretty sure I've heard it before. But the intro scene is just Oscar Isaac running around New York with what I thought looked like CGI snow at one point, but that might have just been me being weird. But it's him running, and I realized last night after I was thinking about the movie, and I mentioned this before, but that shot was only used to establish that he could run and chase after a guy in a later chase sequence. And that I understand, like, the establishing shot, like, that's good cinema. It's better to have, like, an establishing shot of that rather than just him being, like, a track sprinter, like, chasing down some dude in the streets of New York, and you're just like, why is he able to do this? But even that chase scene was long and boring. Like, after it went on for so long, and it was just.
I thought the chase scene had some of the best, like, cinematography in the movie.
The chase
of
scene,
the extremely wide shots that kind of, like, show the whole area, and they really run for, like, 30 seconds or more in one shot. And, like, I can see that would be kind of boring, but I just really liked how those scenes looked, and, like, the shots of, like, they just looked beautiful.
And I mean, talking about the cinematography of this film, I mean,
I thought the indoor cinematography was kind of. There was nothing going on there, but whenever they had an outdoor shot,
I honestly thought that
really good.
I honestly thought that even the indoor cinematography was quite artistic. Just the use of lighting, the use of darkness, the sort of all the characters casted such these huge shadows everywhere, and the whole film is sort of shrouded in shadows. And I thought that the cinematography did a great job to sort of synchronize with the entire tone of the film.
I will say that for most of the outdoor shots, although that, like, it's like New York in like February, March when the snow is melting, and like that's like the shittiest time of the season, even from being from Wisconsin, like that's awful. But it looked like every single shot that was outdoor in this film had like the sepia Instagram tone over it.
Yeah,
It was like
the sun was always setting.
The whole film was like
sepia.
brown,
Yeah,
just straight brown. That was something I noticed too.
1980s New York did not look cool. Like, it looked gross. Like, I didn't want to live there.
But it was perfect, because like the film is about like the world sort of becoming more corrupt. They talk about how, like, when Abel is talking to the head of the Teamsters, he's like, this isn't what it was like when we were driving trucks back in the day. This is a whole different world. And I thought that that sort of grimy look of the film with the really dark sort of color scheme kind of communicated that message.
So I think you're kind of getting into like themes territory, right, Chris? I know, Bryce, you want to talk about themes.
Yeah, I've got one thing to bring up first.
Okay.
I thought it was kind of interesting how this movie dealt with stereotypical gender roles, and like on the outside, on the surface, it really looks like Oscar Isaac's like the family's breadwinner. He's the one doing the jobs. He's making money, but like that's not at all what was really happening. Like Jessica Chastain was really. There's even a scene where like the scene where the two of them are fighting. And, like, he slaps her, and then she, like, says, you need to provide for this family. It's kind of interesting because, like, she was really doing a lot of the providing, even though it doesn't seem like it.
I mean, and she was keeping the entire thing together. He was almost, I mean, religion was not mentioned in the film, but he was almost pious with his morals, and he had a reluctance to adapt. Because, the world has become this hard, cruel place, and he refused to acknowledge that. And Jessica Chastain's character is the voice telling him, like, you have to be, the other men out here in this world they're not thinking about morals. They're thinking about survival. And if you want to survive, and if you want, the family to survive, you are going to have to think the same way.
I think that's one of the major kind of themes, or kind of the overarching themes of the film, is like the loss of morals, and how, although Abel Morales is like this man that holds his morals to like close to his chest. Like, he doesn't want to arm his drivers with weapons. He doesn't want to give them fake permits. But he has goals, and in order to achieve those goals, he has to stoop to lower and lower levels. Like, he goes to he uses his little brother to co-sign on a mortgage for their apartment building that they own together. He's taking money away from his little brother.
I thought that was another example of how like his morals are declining.
Oh, exactly.
That's like a ridiculous thing to ask, especially of a little brother that's still in high school.
Yeah, and then he eventually goes to Peter, one of his former friends, the guy that lived in the tennis house.
That house was amazing.
It was very cool.
Like the architecture in there was sweet.
But like the thing is, I didn't pick this up in the movie. I got this from the Wikipedia page. But apparently he had mafia ties. I didn't pick that up from the film.
Yeah, that was. I didn't.
But he asked him for $600,000. He eventually went to him to ask for money, to a member of the mafia to ask for a large sum of money. And then even after that, he stooped lower and used money that his wife had skimmed from his own company to fund this terminal purchase that he needed to get from the Jewish men that were selling it to him. And it was just... he kept his morals close to his chest for most of the film, but he had to keep stooping to lower and lower levels in order to eventually achieve what he wanted.
And
I think an interesting idea that brings up too is kind of like the whole theme of like the American dream. I thought that idea was present throughout the movie, and it kind of shows how hard it really is. It's not something anybody can just succeed. Like for him to grow his company, he had to stoop to those levels, and it kind of shows how hard it is for the American dream.
I think that part of it too is that Abel met the American dream at one point in his life, but he wanted to keep going and keep going. In order to do that, you need to start stepping on toes. You need to start playing dirty in order to achieve even more and more. And that's just kind of like greed that is inherent in some people.
I mean, this is definitely a film that looks at the world through a perspective of, scarcity. The American dream for one person is someone else's, American nightmare, and you can't have both at the same time, and I think you kind of look at this film. I kind of look at this film as kind of a hero film in a way. I think Abel's character is kind of an almost heroic protagonist in the way that he sticks to his morals.
Well, if you talk about him as a hero, one of the other issues I had with the film is like there's no villain. The villain is just
the villain's kind of a
the villain's like everything else besides him.
Yeah, I mean the villain is
like the whole time I was thinking like, who is sending these guys after him? Like, why is he getting sued? Who's behind all of this? And then at the end, it's just like, oh, it was nobody.
Yeah, I didn't like.
That's one issue I had with it.
It kind of played up like a whodunit aspect, like who was sending these guys after him. And there was this scene where the Godfather scene, which we can talk about after this, where he walks into the Italian restaurant or wherever they are, and there's a big circular table with all the members of like the mafia and all their oil companies that run in New York around him, and he was sitting there, and I just thought this, and like you expected it was kind of like we said, we compared it to Avalon, where you knew one person there was evil, but it turned out no one was. They were all just people that were gathered there, and then he was just like. I did not like how this scene ended where he's like, stop. Like he was like a little kid in like third grade who was getting bullied.
The thing is, and there are definitely some plot holes in the way that, in some of the struggles that Abel had to go through. Why were thugs coming to his house if they didn't work for anyone? There was the thugs coming to his house was definitely trying to send a signal that like someone was messing with him, and that didn't end up being the case. So there are plot weaknesses in that sense. But I think that
what I didn't understand was why was the driver dude so committed to his job?
Yeah.
Why is he getting in this shootout over he's just driving trucks? Like, no offense to anyone that drives trucks, but it's not like you can get another job somewhere else.
But I think that
I don't know why he was so committed.
At the same time, I
think his life on the line.
This film, it's a character study in testing a protagonist who wants to be a good person, and that's a rare thing in film these days. I believe. I think that now we have either an anti-hero who is willing to, a Frank Underwood, Walter White type who is willing to go all the way off the rails to achieve their dreams, or we have a hero, a Marvel type superhero who really faces no challenges to their morals whatsoever. And I think this film gave us something unique in the sense of a hero that wants to be moral, but is actually going to have to make a commitment to protect those morals.
I like that. That's a good point. It's someone that actually has like you said, Walter White, like he'll go to any means to get what he wants. And the same thing, like you think of any Marvel film, Captain America, Hulk, anything. There's nothing stopping them. They can achieve whatever they want. and so morals don't play an issue with them, except like
Yeah, I
kill
mean,
people.
is Captain America a good guy? I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know from watching a Marvel movie.
He might.
I'm pretty
be
sure
anti-Sem-
Captain America's a
But
pretty good
He
he's
might
guy.
be an
not
anti-Semite,
tested.
but he just fights.
He's not tested
Ultron.
though. He's not tested. If you put Captain America in this film, would he arm his drivers with guns? Maybe he would. We don't
You don't know
know.
with shields.
You don't know
with
Just
shields.
bash them
We don't-
in the face.
We don't learn those kind of things about characters anymore. And I think that this film was definitely, sort of, I wouldn't say innovative, because I mean films, it's not a new thing to test your protagonist, but this film definitely sort of went against the current a bit in terms of letting your protagonist be good, but really trying to just degrade their morals and really trying to strip away the core of their beliefs.
One scene I'd like to bring up that we haven't talked about yet is the scene where he's instructing his salesmen about how to do their jobs. He tells them, if you're offered two things like coffee or tea, take the more sophisticated one, so take the tea. And my favorite part of the movie is he tells them, after you look at the paper, look at them, and then stare for an uncomfortable amount of time. I think that's exactly what this movie was doing to the audience.
Staring at them.
It has these long scenes and it just stares at you, and it waits for you to get what's going on. And I think that's kind of why it seemed long.
Yeah, and I can see that.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
It just stares at you until you get it.
Yeah,
Which is why I had a lot of time to take notes.
I mean,
If they would have thought their audience was a little smarter, maybe the movie could have been a little shorter.
Well, also, going back to what you said about the salesman, is there was the scene where the salesman was even attacked after he left the house. So that meant that the
that
private,
doesn't make sense either.
The private guys that were stealing the trucks and then selling them to other oil companies, piecing it out. They must have went to the house and said, "We're going to punch this guy." What incentive?
And
did
it almost looked like the
have there?
family they set the salesman up.
I think that's what
get
what
punched.
happened.
And
What did the
it
family
seemed
have
like
to
that.
gain from doing that?
and it doesn't make
it all was trying to lead to a villain, and they're just
it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, when the more you talk about this film, the more certain elements of the plot start to fall away. But I think that this isn't a film that's so much about, it's not a suspense. I mean, there's some element of suspense, but it's not a suspenseful, it's not one of those intrigue, espionage type movies where the plot means everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more of a character study, and you have these great characters to study. And I think that the writer is just sort of looking for situations to put them in, to sort of dive even deeper into their personalities. So I excuse away the plot holes with that rationale, that it just we're trying to test the characters, but there were a lot of plot holes.
And I think that's when you can ignore plot holes and kind of overlook them when it comes, like you said, it comes to a character study like this. But even one scene, the final scene, and I know you had a quote from it, Chris, or one of you guys had a quote from where he's talking to detective who was played by, I can't pronounce his last name.
David Oyelowo.
And he was saying how this place, David Oyelowo, I think, was talking to
Good enough.
Abel and said that this place will put you at the top. You'll have a lot of power here. Even you might even gain political power at that. And then after that, I think the quote was,
Yeah, and I love that ending, because what I interpreted it as is that David Oyelowo's character was trying to, because they were talking about, we need to come to some sort of resolution here, right? And when David Oyelowo's character says, well, this new terminal is going to give you a lot of political power, political power you'll be able to use to influence things. Mm-hmm. I interpreted that as, because Abel is asking, please lay off, stop prosecuting me so I can go about my business. So I interpret that as a very subtle attempt at, getting bribery,
And his morals declining even more.
Right. But he responds to that by saying, it's never the destination that is mattered to me. It's the path that I take to get there. And he says, I've always taken the path that was most right. That's what he says. And I believe that ending is saying that, despite everything he's been through, that he has made the decision that even if his morals will destroy him, he will stick to them. So I see that ending as a reaffirming of the main character's strength.
I saw it.
I saw the ending completely
Yeah,
oppositely.
same. I agree.
I
with
thought
that.
his morals were completely declining, and it's kind of highlighted by the driver that kills himself. So like he's walking, it's really intense, a really great ending to the movie, I thought. And then he shoots himself in the face. The bullet breaks the oil storage thingy bobber, and then we see the oil dripping down right next to his blood. And that's like one of the most important shots in the movie thing, and it kind of like shows how this business is now mixed with this blood, and like you can't come back from that. This man died because of your business, and that's kind of like the worst thing that could happen.
I think that what I thought of the ending was when the DA says like this will give you a lot of political power, and like they want to reach some kind of conclusion. I thought that was hinting at more to come in Abel's future, as in he can use his political power in the situation to help the DA, and I think that's what they were saying. They need to come to some sort of resolution, where Abel will help the DA in some way achieve like even a higher position, like become mayor or governor, anything like that, as the district attorney for New York City, or as he's currently the district attorney of New York City. And they were trying to say like if you do this for me in the future, I'll lay off you now and I'll let you go about your business because I know that you'll help me. It
looked to me like Abel turned down that offer when he talks about how he's always taken the path which is most right. That's how I interpreted that.
I
thought that quote came earlier in the movie.
No, it was right at the end.
I think it was at the end. But I think that might have been, you could have interpreted as he thought it was right, but does that make him good? He might think that what he's doing is good. He might think
even if he thinks he's on the right path, he could still be immoral.
And how he could be putting up this like screen and like that's blocking all of the bad things that he's done, and still think like I'm still a moral person, even though he's stooping to lower and lower levels. He is actually he's becoming this bad person, but he doesn't think he's bad. He doesn't think he's doing amoral things. He thinks that he is still doing the right thing, and how he said like I think I've always chosen the path that is right.
I mean, that's an interpretation that I can understand. He is becoming corrupted, but he is retaining the belief that he is behaving morally. I can see that. That's not what I got out of it, but I can understand it at least.
I don't know. I think after we've discussed this now, I enjoy the film more for its qualities. I probably wouldn't want to watch it again, but I can appreciate it for what it's worth. Kind of like what I said about There Will Be Blood and Ex Machina. This is one of those films that, like you said, essential viewing. Like I think it's good to watch, and you definitely I needed some analysis in order to get and kind of appreciate it for more of what it is.
Well, this movie is basically There Will Be Blood in 1981 New York.
Yeah. So, Cole, if you had to give it a rating out of 10, what would you?
That's tough. I'd give it like probably for the essentialness, for its like the message it conveys, I would give it probably an 8 or 9 out of 10. However, for sheer enjoyment and like entertainment value, I'd give it like 6.5 dead deers out of 10.
Bryce?
I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. Good story, good characters, but little long, and they could have got to their point much quicker.
I would give this film. I would give it an 8. I mean, I kind of get a lot of enjoyment out of these sort of really slow, sort of agonizing films. And I just thought, you combine this beautiful cinematography, a great soundtrack. I mean, I'm kind of a sucker for the beautiful cinematography and great soundtrack.
The cinematography is definitely a plus.
And
that helped the movie a lot.
And you throw in these really compelling characters. Great performances across the board.
Oscar Isaac was really good. I'm really excited to see him in Star Wars now.
and you
Jessica Chastain was hot.
You layer that on top of well written dialogue, and a plot that definitely had some depth to it. And I think I feel comfortable giving that film an 8 out of 10. Definitely an enjoyable film. I would consider it to be essential viewing.
I would not consider it essential viewing. I'd say give it a watch if you're bored.
And you have 2 hours that actually feels like 4 hours. So then, I think that concludes our discussion for essential viewing of A Most Violent Year. But Bryce, it's your turn to pick the movie for next week.
Next week we're watching a completely different kind of movie. This is one of my favorite movies. It's critically acclaimed. I love it. I know Chris isn't gonna like it.
Chris and I have both not seen it, and I don't even remember what it's called.
It's called Short Term 12. It's more of an emotional story. It's got great characters. It's a tearjerker. It's gonna be great. We'll see you next week.